Kenneth Ward stood in the center of a small village in Nakhon Ratchasima province, surrounded by confused locals who were trying to understand why this American man kept asking about a funeral that had never happened. It was oppressively hot, 37 degrees Celsius, and Ken's black funeral suit, purchased specifically for this trip, clung to his body with sweat as he showed villagers photos of Chanita on his phone. "B," he said desperately, using her nickname, "Chanita Ratnapong. She told me her mother died 3 days ago. The funeral is supposed to be today. Where is the temple? Where is her family's house?" The elderly village headman examined the photos, conferred with other villagers in rapid Thai, then turned to Ken with an expression that mixed pity and confusion. "This girl, not from this village," he said in broken English. "We check family register. No Ratnapong family here. No funeral this week. Maybe wrong village?" But this was the address B had given him, the address he'd sent money to dozens of times over the past 10 months. The village where her sick mother supposedly lived, where her younger brother needed help with taxi license fees, where her family home needed constant repairs. Kenneth Ward, 62 years old, had spent $183,000 supporting B and her family over 10 months, including the $25,000 he'd wired just 3 days ago, as funeral expenses and family support during this difficult time. Now, standing in this rural Thai village with his phone showing B's number as disconnected, her Line account blocked, and her Facebook profile deleted, Ken understood with soul-crushing clarity that everything, the dying mother, the struggling family, the love and devotion B had shown him, had been an elaborately staged performance. And he, a man who'd spent 40 years in business making careful decisions and avoiding risks, had been the easiest mark she'd ever found. Kenneth Ward had spent most of his adult life working with his hands and building something from nothing. At 23, fresh out of community college with a business certificate, Ken had started working at an auto parts supplier in Portland, Oregon. The job was unglamorous warehouse work initially, loading trucks, managing inventory, dealing with mechanics and repair shops who needed parts quickly and cheaply. But Ken was reliable, showed up on time, worked hard, and gradually moved up. By 30, he was running the warehouse. By 35, he was operations manager. At 42, when the owner wanted to retire, Ken borrowed money from his father-in-law, took out loans, and bought the business. Ward Auto Supply became his life for the next 20 years. The business did well, not spectacularly, but steadily. Ken employed 8 people, served repair shops across the Portland metro area, and earned a comfortable middle-class income. He wasn't wealthy, but he owned his home, drove a decent truck, and took annual fishing trips to the Oregon coast. Ken had married at 28 to a woman named Laura, a dental hygienist he'd met through mutual friends. The marriage was solid for the first 15 years, not passionate, but comfortable and stable. They had one daughter, Jessica, who was now 32 and living in Seattle with her own family. But somewhere around their 20th anniversary, things started to fall apart. Laura became critical and distant, complaining that Ken worked too much, that he was boring, that their life had become predictable and stale. Ken thought she was going through a phase, that it would pass. It didn't. Laura filed for divorce when Ken was 57. She got the house in the settlement, half the business value, and a portion of his retirement accounts. Ken had to take out a loan to pay her settlement, and suddenly, at 57, he was living alone in a small apartment and working 70-hour weeks to pay off debt. The divorce devastated him, not because he'd been madly in love with Laura, but because it represented the failure of everything he'd built, the life, the stability, the partnership he'd thought was solid. After the divorce, Ken threw himself into work with renewed intensity. He had nothing else. Jessica called occasionally, but was busy with her own life. Ken's parents had both passed away years earlier. His few friends from the business world were polite but distant. Ken was fundamentally alone. By the time Ken turned 61, he was exhausted. The business was still doing okay, but the market was changing. Online auto parts retailers were eating into his margins. Younger mechanics preferred ordering parts digitally. Ken felt like he was fighting a losing battle. When a regional chain offered to buy Ward Auto Supply for $380,000, Ken accepted without much negotiation. Combined with what remained of his retirement savings and the equity from selling his small apartment, Ken had approximately $520,000 total, enough to retire if he was smart about it. But Ken didn't want to stay in Portland. The city felt empty without his business to fill the days. He couldn't afford the lifestyle he wanted in Oregon on a modest pension and his savings. And after 40 years of working 6-day weeks, Ken wanted something different. Warmth, adventure, a place where his money stretched further. Ken had heard about Thailand from a customer at the shop years ago, stories about cheap living, beautiful beaches, and friendly people. After the sale of his business finalized, Ken started researching seriously. He joined Facebook groups for expats in Thailand, watched YouTube videos, and read blogs about retirement in Southeast Asia. Pattaya kept appearing in his research. The city had a large expat community, plenty of English speakers, good healthcare facilities, and everything from quiet beach areas to active nightlife. Most importantly, Ken could live comfortably on $2,000 a month, maybe less if he was frugal. In July, 18 months ago, Ken booked a one-way ticket to Bangkok with a connection to Pattaya. He was 61 years old, newly retired, and ready for the peaceful, affordable retirement he felt he'd earned after 4 decades of hard work. When Ken's plane landed at Suvarnabhumi Airport on a humid evening in late July, he felt genuine optimism for the first time since the divorce. The terminal was modern and efficient, signs in both Thai and English everywhere, and the warm air felt welcoming even through the air conditioning. He took a taxi to Pattaya, watching the Bangkok suburbs transform into the chaotic, neon-lit beach city he'd seen in videos. Ken had rented a furnished studio apartment near Jomtien Beach for the first 3 months, 16,000 baht per month, about $460. The place was basic but clean, with air conditioning, a small kitchen, and a balcony overlooking a side street. Ken's first few weeks in Pattaya were spent simply adjusting. He walked along the beach every morning, ate cheap meals at local Thai restaurants where a full plate of food cost less than $5, and spent evenings at air-conditioned shopping malls or quiet cafes. The weather was hot and humid, the traffic chaotic, the language barrier frustrating, but Ken felt a sense of possibility he hadn't felt in years. But as the weeks passed, loneliness crept in. Ken would see couples walking hand in hand on the beach, families laughing at restaurants, groups of friends enjoying dinner together, and feel the weight of his solitude. He'd left Portland to escape loneliness, but he'd brought it with him. That's when Ken started visiting the bars. Ken met Chanita Ratnapong during his 6th week in Pattaya in early September. He'd been walking along Soi Buakau, one of Pattaya's main bar streets, feeling curious, but also slightly intimidated by the scene. The street was lined with small beer bars, open-air establishments with neon signs, pool tables, and Thai women working as hostesses. Music blasted from competing sound systems, and the air smelled like grilled meat, beer, and exhaust fumes. Ken stopped at a quieter bar near the end of the Swai, a small place called Lucky Star, with only a handful of customers. He took a seat at the bar counter and ordered a Chang beer from the bartender, a young Thai woman with a friendly smile. "First time Lucky Star?" she asked in accented but clear English. "Yeah, first time," Ken replied, still exploring the area. "You live Pattaya or holiday?" "I live here now, just moved from America, retired." The young woman's face lit up. "Welcome to Thailand. I'm B. My real name Chanita, but everyone call me B because too difficult for foreigner." Ken smiled. "I'm Ken, from Portland, Oregon." Unlike some of the more aggressive bar girls Ken had encountered at other establishments, B didn't immediately ask him to buy her a drink or try to sit on his lap. She just chatted with him casually while serving other customers, asking about his life in America, why he chose Thailand, what he thought of Pattaya so far. Ken found himself talking more than he had in weeks. He told her about his auto parts business, about working his whole life, and finally retiring, about wanting a simpler, warmer life than Portland could offer. B listened attentively, asking follow-up questions, seeming genuinely interested. "You work very hard your whole life," B said, with what seemed like sincere admiration. "That very good. Strong man. My father same work hard for family." Something about the way she said it with respect, rather than flattery, made Ken feel valued rather than exploited. Ken stayed at Lucky Star for 3 hours that first night. B sat with him during slow periods, and they talked about everything. She told him she was 28, from a small village in Isan, northeastern Thailand, and had come to Pattaya 3 years ago to find work. She worked at the bar to send money home to her mother, who had diabetes and needed expensive medication. "I not like this work," B said quietly, looking embarrassed. "But my family need help. My mother old, my brother try get taxi license but expensive. I only one can work. Back home, no job for good money." Ken felt a wave of sympathy. Here was a young woman sacrificing her dignity to support her family, working in an environment she clearly wasn't comfortable with because she had no other options. It reminded Ken of his own work ethic, the years of grinding through difficult jobs because it's what needed to be done. "How much does your mother's medicine cost?" Ken asked. B looked uncomfortable. "Very expensive. Maybe 12,000 baht each month, but I not tell you because I want money. I just explain why I work here." Ken appreciated that she wasn't asking directly. It felt more honest somehow. "I understand. Family is important. You're a good daughter." Before Ken left that night, he asked for B's line contact so they could stay in touch. She gave it to him with a shy smile. "You come back see me, yes? I like talk with you. You different from other customer." Walking back to his apartment that night, Ken felt something he hadn't felt since before the divorce. A connection. Not just attraction though. B was pretty in a natural, unassuming way, but a genuine human connection with someone who seemed to see him as more than just a wallet. Over the next 2 weeks, Ken returned to Lucky Star almost every evening. B always greeted him warmly, as if he were the only customer who mattered. She would sit with him for hours when the bar wasn't busy, and their conversations deepened. She asked about his daughter, his marriage, his life back in Portland. She shared more about her own struggles, the difficulty of working in the bar scene, the pressure from her family, her dreams of having a normal life someday. "I want marry good man," B told him one evening. "Not rich man, just good man who kind and take care family. I want leave bar life, have normal life like other Thai ladies." Ken felt his heart stir. Here was someone who valued what mattered: kindness, family, partnership. She wasn't chasing money or status. She just wanted a decent life. By late September, about 6 weeks after they'd met, Ken and B were in a relationship. It happened gradually, B starting to meet him outside the bar for dinners at local restaurants, then coming to his apartment to cook Thai food for him, then spending nights with him. She brought a small bag of clothes and toiletries, and suddenly Ken's empty apartment felt like a home. Ken had never been happier. After years of loneliness in Portland and weeks of isolation in Pattaya, here was someone who cared about him, who cooked for him, who greeted him with genuine affection when he came home from his morning walks. B made him feel young, vital, needed. One evening in early October, B mentioned something that would set in motion Ken's financial destruction. "Ken, I need tell you something," she said, her voice hesitant. "My mother very sick. She need new medicine, more expensive than before. Doctor say if she not take, she maybe die. But I not have enough money." Ken felt immediate concern. "How much does she need?" "Maybe 20,000 baht for 3 months medicine. I so sorry to tell you. I know you not my ATM machine, but I very worried for her." Ken did the quick math. 20,000 baht was about $570. Nothing, really, compared to what he had in savings. "Don't worry about it. I'll help. Your mother needs to be okay." B's eyes filled with tears. "Really? You help us? But you not even meet my mother. Why you so kind?" "Because I care about you, and family is important." She hugged him tightly, sobbing against his shoulder. "You best man I ever meet, Ken. Thank you so much. I never forget this." Ken transferred the money the next day. B showed him photos a week later, her elderly mother in a village house, looking frail but smiling, holding what appeared to be medication boxes. Ken felt validated. This was real. He was helping real people. He didn't realize those photos were stock images purchased from a Thai photo service that specialized in family photos for bar girls to show foreign customers. He didn't know B's mother wasn't actually sick, wasn't even living in the village, B claimed. He didn't know this was step one in a carefully orchestrated extraction of his wealth. He just knew he felt needed, valued, and loved for the first time in years, and that feeling would cost him everything. Call to action. If Ken's story is already raising red flags for you, please subscribe to our channel for more true crime and love scam documentaries from Southeast Asia. These romance scams target kind, lonely people using emotional manipulation and fake family emergencies. By subscribing and sharing, you help protect others from making the same devastating mistakes. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications now. By November, 3 months after meeting B, Ken's life had transformed completely, and so had his spending. B had officially moved into Ken's apartment, transforming the sterile bachelor space into something that felt like a real home. She cooked elaborate Thai meals, kept everything clean, decorated with small touches that made the place more inviting. Ken felt like he'd gained a partner, a companion, someone who genuinely cared about his well-being. But the financial requests had escalated steadily. After the initial 20,000 baht for her mother's medicine, there was her brother's taxi license application, 35,000 baht. Then her family's house needed urgent roof repairs after monsoon rains, 45,000 baht. Then her cousin needed money for a medical emergency, 22,000 baht. Then her mother needed additional treatments, another 18,000 baht. Each request came with tears, apologies, and promises. "I so sorry ask you, Ken. I hate asking, but you only person can help us. After we marry, I pay you back everything. I promise." They'd started talking about marriage in late October. B had introduced the idea gently, mentioning how, in Thai culture, living together without marriage was frowned upon, how her family was traditional and wanted her to be properly married. Ken had agreed enthusiastically. Why not? He loved her, she loved him, they were building a life together. But there was a problem. B couldn't quit working at Lucky Star while living with Ken because the bar owner required advance payment to release her from her contract. A bar fine. That was essentially buying out her employment. "If I quit without pay bar, fine. They make trouble for me," B explained. "Maybe call police, say I owe money. Better we pay proper, then I free." The bar fine was 60,000 baht, about $1,700. Ken paid it without hesitation. B officially quit the bar, and Ken felt proud that he'd rescued her from that life. But then B suggested something that would significantly accelerate Ken's financial drain. They should rent a proper house, not live in a cramped studio apartment. "This place too small for married couple," B said. "When your daughter visit where she sleep, when my family visit where they stay, we need real house, Ken." Ken saw the logic. If they were going to build a life together, they needed space. They looked at rental houses around Jomtien and found a nice 2-bedroom house in a small development, 28,000 baht per month, about $800. It was more than Ken wanted to spend, but B was right, they needed space. They moved in December. The landlord required first and last month's rent, plus deposit a total of 84,000 baht up front. Ken paid it, and they settled into what felt like domestic bliss. B decorated enthusiastically, cooking in the proper kitchen, tending a small garden in the back. Ken felt like he'd finally achieved the retirement life he'd imagined. But the house meant additional expenses. Furniture, 90,000 baht for basics. A refrigerator and washing machine, 45,000 baht. B also needed a motorbike, so she could run errands and visit her family, without relying on Ken's car, 75,000 baht, for a used Honda Click. By January, 5 months after meeting B, Ken had spent approximately $125,000, 16,000 on her mother's medical expenses, 11,000 on family emergencies and house repairs, 2,000 on the bar fine, 16,000 on the rental house and deposits, and 80,000 on furniture, appliances, and the motorbike. Ken still had approximately $395,000 in his accounts, plenty to live on comfortably, and he rationalized every expense. They were building a life together, making investments in their future. The motorbike and furniture weren't just for B, they were for both of them. The house expenses were reasonable for a couple. The family support was just being a good partner. Ken's expat friends tried to warn him. Dennis, a British retiree Ken had met at a coffee shop, pulled him aside one afternoon. "Mate, you need to be careful. I've been in Pattaya 8 years. I've seen this pattern 100 times. Bar girl, sob story about family, escalating requests for money. It never ends well." Ken bristled. "B's not like that. She's genuine. She didn't even ask for most of the money I offered because I wanted to help. That's what they do. They make you feel like you're the hero, like you're choosing to help. But it's all manipulation. How much have you spent?" "That's none of your business," Ken said, feeling defensive. Dennis shook his head. "Just be careful, Ken. Protect yourself. Get prenups. Keep finances separate. Don't put anything in her name, because if this goes south, you'll have no recourse." Ken left that conversation feeling irritated. What did Dennis know? He was just a cynical expat who'd probably been burned before. B was different. Their relationship was real. But in February, B suggested something that would push Ken's spending into dangerous territory. She wanted to start a small business. "I not want sit home all day," B explained. "I want work, earn money, be partner with you. I think I open small shop, coffee shop, or maybe beauty salon. Thai ladies love beauty salon. I do hair, nails, makeup, make good money, be independent." Ken appreciated her ambition. She wasn't content to be supported, she wanted to contribute. It reminded him of his own entrepreneurial spirit. "How much would it cost to start?" Ken asked. B had clearly researched it. For small beauty salon, maybe 200,000 baht for equipment, products, renovation. Then 3 months rent, advance maybe another 60,000 baht. Total maybe 260,000 baht. That about $7,400. Ken felt hesitant. That was a significant amount. But B presented it as an investment that would generate income, not just an expense. And if she could build a successful business, it would benefit both of them. "Let me think about it," Ken said. Over the next week, B showed Ken potential locations, brought home brochures for salon equipment, and drew up basic business plans. Everything looked professional and well thought out. She assured Ken that within 6 months, the salon would be profitable and she could start paying him back for the initial investment. Ken transferred the money. The salon opened in late February in a small shop space near their house. B hired 2 of her friends as assistants, and for the first few weeks, business seemed decent. Ken would visit occasionally and see customers getting their hair done or nails painted. B seemed happy and busy, working long days, but the salon wasn't profitable. In fact, it seemed to constantly need additional funds. Equipment broke and needed replacing 15,000 baht. Products needed restocking 20,000 baht. The landlord suddenly required additional insurance deposits, 35,000 baht. Staff wages needed to be paid even when business was slow, another 18,000 baht per month. By April, 7 months after meeting B, Ken had invested approximately 310,000 baht in the salon, about $8,800 on top of the initial investment. The business was hemorrhaging money, not generating it. Ken was becoming concerned about his spending. He'd now parted with approximately $148,000 since meeting B. His savings had dwindled from $520,000 to $372,000 more than a quarter of his retirement fund gone in 7 months. He tried discussing budget concerns with B, but she became defensive and emotional. "You think I waste your money? You think I not try hard enough? I work every day, but business take time. You want me close salon? Lose everything we invest?" The guilt was immediate. Ken was being impatient. Business did take time. He was letting his fears override his support for her. "I'm not saying close it," Ken said gently. "I'm just saying we need to be more careful with spending. You not trust me?" B's voice took on a wounded tone that made Ken's chest tighten. "Of course I trust you. Then why you worry about money? We together, yes? What yours is mine, what mine is yours. That what marriage mean?" They weren't actually married yet, but B had been pushing for them to formalize things. Ken had been putting it off, not because he didn't want to marry her, but because he wanted to wait until his daughter Jessica could visit and be part of the ceremony. In May, B suggested they visit her village so Ken could formally meet her family and ask for their blessing to marry. "In Thai culture, very important," she explained. "We cannot marry without family approval." Ken agreed. He'd been wanting to meet her family anyway, to see where B came from, to understand her background better. They planned a trip for mid-May, taking Ken's car on the long drive to Nakhon Ratchasima province. That trip would be the beginning of the end. Ken and B drove to Nakhon Ratchasima province in mid-May, a journey of about 6 hours from Pattaya. The landscape transformed gradually from coastal tourism to rural agriculture, rice fields stretching to the horizon, small villages with wooden houses, water buffalo grazing along roadsides. It was beautiful in its simplicity, and Ken felt excited to see where B had grown up. They arrived at the village in late afternoon. It was small and rural, maybe 30 houses along a dirt road, chickens and dogs wandering freely, elderly people sitting in the shade of porches. B directed Ken to a modest wooden house raised on stilts, with a covered porch and an outdoor cooking area. "This is my family home," B said, squeezing his hand. "Please be kind. My family very traditional, very simple." An elderly Thai woman emerged from the house, smiling broadly and speaking rapidly in Thai. B translated, "My mother say welcome. She very happy meet you." Ken was introduced to what B claimed was her family: Mama Sum, her mother, Papa Boon, her father, and Nong Tong, her younger brother. They welcomed Ken warmly, serving him food and treating him like an honored guest. Through B as translator, they asked about his life in America, his business, his plans with B. Ken felt embraced by this family. They weren't wealthy, but they were warm and genuine. When Ken presented them with gifts, a basket of fruits, cash in an envelope, and gold jewelry for Mama Sum, as is traditional in Thai engagement, customs, they seemed genuinely touched and appreciative. Papa Boon spoke through B. "We give you our daughter. We trust you take care her. She good girl. She love you. We happy for you both." They held a small ceremony that evening with neighbors and the village monk, not a legal marriage, but a traditional Thai blessing ceremony that made their commitment feel official and sacred. Ken felt moved by the simplicity and sincerity of it all. The next morning, before they left, Mama Sam pulled B aside for what looked like a serious conversation. When they returned to the car, B looked worried. "My mother tell me Papa Boon needs surgery," she said quietly as they drove away. "His heart have problem. Doctor in Korat City say he need operation soon or he die. But cost very expensive, maybe 150,000 baht. Ken felt his stomach clench. 150,000 baht was about $4,300. "How urgent is it?" "Doctor say within 2 months. My family not have money. They already borrow from neighbors for my mother diabetes medicine. They very scared." Ken looked at B's worried face and felt a surge of protectiveness. These people had just welcomed him into their family. Papa Boon was now his family too. How could he not help? "I'll cover it," Ken said. "Your father needs to be okay." B's eyes filled with tears. "Really? But that's so much money?" "Family takes care of family," Ken said firmly. He transferred the money when they returned to Pattaya. B showed him hospital paperwork a week later, documents in Thai that appeared to be from a hospital in Korat, detailing Papa Boon's upcoming cardiac surgery. Everything looked official and legitimate. But over the following months, there were complications. The surgery was postponed. More tests needed first, another 15,000 baht. Then Papa Boon needed pre-surgery medications, another 12,000 baht. Then the hospital required additional deposits, another 25,000 baht. By July, 10 months after meeting B, Ken had spent approximately $178,000, 65,000 on B and her family directly, 40,000 on the house and living expenses, 40,000 on the salon, and 33,000 on Papa Boon's medical care. Ken had $242,000 left, less than half of what he'd started with. His monthly living expenses, rent, utilities, food, transportation were running about $3,000 per month, which meant his remaining savings would last maybe 6 or 7 years if he didn't spend anything else on B's family. Ken was becoming genuinely worried. He tried discussing finances with B again, but she reacted with hurt and anger. "You worry about money more than my father's life?" she said, tears streaming down her face. "My father maybe die, and you count dollar? I thought you good man, but maybe you same as other cheap Charlie foreigner who only care about money." Ken felt crushed by guilt. He was being selfish, putting financial security ahead of human life. What kind of person did that? "I'm sorry," Ken said, pulling her close. "Of course, your father's life is more important. I'm just worried about our long-term security. After my father okay, no more need money," B promised. "Everything will be good. The salon start making profit soon. My brother get taxi license and pay us back. Everything okay. You just need trust me a little more." Ken believed her. He wanted to believe her, because if he didn't believe her, that meant the past 10 months had been a lie. That meant he'd been scammed. That meant he'd lost nearly $200,000 to a con artist. It was easier to believe her than to face that possibility. In late August, B received devastating news. Papa Boon had died suddenly of a heart attack before the surgery could be performed. She collapsed in grief when she got the phone call, sobbing uncontrollably. Ken held her while she cried, feeling helpless and heartbroken for her loss. He'd only met Papa Boon once, but the man had welcomed him as family, had given his blessing for Ken to marry B. "I need go home for funeral," B said through tears. Traditional Thai funeral lasts 3 days. I need be there for my mother. Of course, Ken said. I'll come with you. No, Ken. Thai funeral very sad, very traditional. Better you stay here, take care house and salon. I go with my friend Som, who also from my village. We go together. Ken felt slightly hurt at being excluded, but he respected her wishes. Thai funeral customs were probably complicated, and his presence might be more burden than help. How much do you need for the funeral expenses? Ken asked gently. B hesitated. Thai funeral very expensive. Need pay monk. Need food for all village. Need buy coffin and everything. Maybe 25,000 baht. Ken transferred the money immediately. B left the next morning with her friend, taking a bus to Nakhon Ratchasima. She called Ken that evening from the village, crying and telling him how hard the funeral was, how devastated her mother was. Over the next 3 days, B sent occasional updates, photos of what appeared to be a Thai funeral ceremony, messages about how difficult everything was. Ken felt deeply sympathetic, wishing he could be there to support her. But on the 4th day, when B still hadn't returned and wasn't answering calls, Ken started to worry. He finally reached her that evening. Everything okay? He asked. I was getting worried. Everything fine, Ken. Funeral finished yesterday, but my mother not doing well. I stay few more days help her, okay? Of course. Take all the time you need. But days turned into a week, and B's communication became sporadic. She'd answer calls sometimes, but not others. Her messages became shorter and less frequent. The salon sat closed, the staff unsure when B would return. By the 2nd week, Ken's worry had transformed into suspicion. Something felt wrong. Why wouldn't B want him there during such a difficult time? Why was she being so evasive? On impulse, Ken decided to drive to the village unannounced. He'd surprise B, offer support to the family, pay his respects at Papa Boon's grave. It was a 6-hour drive, but Ken left early in the morning, determined to be there for his fiancée. He arrived at the village in early afternoon. What he found would shatter everything he believed. Ken pulled up to the wooden house, where B's family supposedly lived, expecting to find mourning relatives and funeral aftermath. Instead, he found the house occupied by an entirely different family, a middle-aged couple with young children who looked confused when Ken knocked on their door. I'm looking for the Ratnapong family, Ken said. B's family. There was a funeral here last week. The woman shook her head. No Ratnapong here. We live here 3 years. No funeral this month. Ken felt his stomach drop. But this is the address. I came here 3 months ago. Met B's parents, Papa Boon and Mama Sum. The couple exchanged glances. The husband said something in Thai that Ken didn't understand. The wife translated, maybe wrong house? Many houses look same. But Ken knew this was the right address. This was the house where he'd been welcomed, where he'd participated in the engagement ceremony, where he'd met B's family. Desperate, Ken drove to the village headman's house, a larger structure in the center of the village that seemed to serve as an informal community center. The headman, an elderly Thai man named Kamnan Sumchai, spoke basic English. Ken showed him photos of B on his phone. I'm looking for this woman, Chanita Ratnapong. She told me her father just died and there was a funeral here. Kamnan Somchai studied the photos, then called over several other villagers. They conferred in Thai, looking at the images, shaking their heads. This girl, not from this village, Kamnan Somchai said finally. We check family register. No Ratnapong family in village records. No funeral last week or this month. But I was here in May, Ken insisted. I met her family at that house. He pointed to the wooden structure where the different family now lived. That family lived there a long time, maybe 3-4 years. Before that, Phongsakorn family, never Ratnapong. Ken felt like he was losing his mind. Are there other villages nearby with the same name? Maybe I'm confused. This only village, this name and district. Maybe she lied to you about where she from? The truth was beginning to crystallize with horrible clarity. The family Ken had met weren't B's real family. They were actors, paid to play roles for a few hours while Ken visited. The traditional ceremony hadn't been real. Papa Boon's death wasn't real. The funeral was fake. Everything was fake. Kamnan Sumchai seemed to recognize something in Ken's devastated expression. You send her money? He asked gently. Ken couldn't speak. He just nodded. How much? About $180,000. Kamnan Somchai's expression shifted to profound sympathy. I'm very sorry. This happened before with foreign men. Thai lady make fake family, get money, then disappear. Very sad. You go to police? Ken drove to the provincial police station in Nakhon Ratchasima City, feeling numb. He filed a report with an English-speaking officer who listened patiently but offered little hope. Mr. Ward, this very difficult case. The money you sent voluntarily, yes? She didn't force you? No, but she lied. About everything. Her family, the medical emergencies, the funeral, all fake. But you have proof? Proof she planned to deceive you from beginning? Ken realized he didn't. He had receipts showing he'd sent money, but nothing proving B had intended to scam him. Every transfer had been voluntary, prompted by his own desire to help. This probably civil matter, not criminal, the officer said. You can try sue her in civil court, but need find her first. And even if you win, if she has no assets, you collect nothing. Ken left the station feeling hopeless. He tried calling B again. Her phone was now completely disconnected. He checked her Facebook profile deleted. Her line account non-existent. He drove back to Pattaya, the 6-hour journey, passing in a blur. When he arrived at the house they'd been renting, he found it emptied of B's belongings. Her clothes, personal items, everything gone. The salon was closed, padlocked, with a sign saying, "Closed permanently" in Thai and English. Ken sat in the empty house and felt his life collapse around him. He'd spent $183,000 in 10 months. His retirement fund had been gutted, and the woman he'd loved, trusted, and planned to marry had disappeared as completely as smoke. Ken hired a private investigator named Kun Somkid, recommended by another expat. What Somkid uncovered over the next 2 weeks was devastating but not surprising. Chanita B. Ratnapong had been running romance scams for at least 6 years. Somkid found evidence of at least 7 previous victims, foreign men from America, Britain, Australia, and Germany who'd lost between $75,000 and $220,000 each to B's schemes. The pattern was always the same. Meet the man at a bar, play the modest, family-oriented girl, move in gradually, introduce fake family members, create medical emergencies, and drain the victims systematically before disappearing. Somkid also discovered that the family Ken had met were professional actors, villagers who were paid approximately 5,000 baht each to play roles for visiting foreigners. They'd done it for multiple scammers over the years. The salon was fake too, Somkid explained. She kept it open a few months to maintain the illusion, but most of the money you gave her went directly to her accounts. The equipment you bought was sold immediately. The staff wages you paid were fictional. Where is she now? Ken asked. She left Thailand, probably Malaysia or Singapore. She does this pattern scam in Thailand for a year, leave for 6 months, come back with new identity. She has at least 3 different names and IDs. Somkid showed Ken photos from social media accounts, B in luxury hotels, wearing expensive clothes, traveling internationally, all funded by her scams. She made approximately $800,000 over 6 years, Somkid said, total across all victims. Very professional operation. Ken felt sick. He'd been one of many. Just another mark in a long line of lonely foreign men who'd believed they'd found something real. By September, 1 year after meeting B, Ken's financial situation was catastrophic. He'd spent $183,000 on B and her fake emergencies. His remaining $337,000 was hemorrhaging quickly, $3,000 per month for living expenses, $5,000 on the private investigator, $15,000 on lawyers who couldn't help him. By November, Ken had only $280,000 left. At his current burn rate, he'd be broke in 6 or 7 years, and he was only 62, potentially facing another 25 years of life. Ken made the painful decision to leave Thailand and return to Portland. He couldn't afford to stay. He sold his car at a loss, broke the lease on the house, and flew back to Oregon with a single suitcase. Portland was cold, gray, and depressing. Ken had no apartment. He'd sold everything before leaving. He moved temporarily into a cheap, extended-stay motel while looking for affordable housing. The contrast between his dreams of warm, peaceful retirement in Thailand and the reality of budget motels in Portland was crushing. Ken's daughter, Jessica, when she learned what happened, was horrified and judgmental. "Dad, how could you be so stupid?" she said over an uncomfortable dinner. "Sending that much money to some bar girl you'd known for a few months? What were you thinking?" Ken had no answer. He hadn't been thinking. He'd been feeling needed, valued, loved, and those feelings had cost him everything. Over the next 6 months, Ken worked part-time at an auto parts store, not as owner anymore, but as a counter clerk making $15 an hour. It was humiliating after owning his own business, but he needed income to stretch his remaining savings. He lived in a small studio apartment that cost $1,200 a month, ate cheap meals, and spent his evenings alone watching television. He'd traded one form of loneliness for another, but this time without even the illusion of love to comfort him. After 8 months in Portland, Ken made a decision. He would return to Thailand. Not to Pattaya, that city held too many painful memories, but to Chiang Mai, the northern city known for its quieter, more laid-back expat community. Ken had about $250,000 left, enough to live modestly if he was extremely careful. He rented a small studio apartment in Chiang Mai for 8,000 baht per month, about $230. He kept his living expenses under $1,500 monthly possible in Chiang Mai's cheaper economy. But Ken didn't return to Thailand to hide. He returned with a mission, warning others. He started a blog called The Bar Girl Who Destroyed My Retirement, where he detailed his experience with brutal honesty. He wrote about every manipulation tactic B had used, every red flag he'd ignored, every moment his loneliness had overridden his judgment. The blog became popular in expat communities. Ken received hundreds of emails from men thanking him for the warning, and dozens more from men sharing similar stories. Ken also started volunteering with a Chiang Mai-based organization called Expat Protection Network that educated foreign retirees about romance scams. He gave talks at expat meetups, shared his story without shame, and helped men recognize the patterns before they lost everything. B didn't steal my money first, Ken tells his audiences. She stole my trust. She made me believe I was special, that our relationship was different, that she genuinely cared about me. And once she had my trust, taking my money was easy. I handed it over willingly because I believed I was helping family, building a future, being a good partner. Every manipulation tactic worked because she'd first established emotional control. Last month, a 60-year-old American named Robert contacted Ken. He'd been dating a Thai woman for 2 months who was asking for money for her mother's medical care. Robert recognized the pattern from Ken's blog and walked away before losing anything. "You saved me," Robert wrote. "I was about to send $20,000 as a first payment. Your story made me see what I couldn't see myself." Ken saved that email. He reads it whenever despair threatens to overwhelm him. Kenneth Ward is now 63 years old, living in a small studio apartment in Chiang Mai on a budget of $1,500 per month. He lost $183,000 to a bar girl who sold him a dream and delivered a nightmare. He'll never fully recover financially. His retirement savings were cut by more than a third, forcing him to work part-time into his 70s and live far more modestly than he'd planned. His relationship with his daughter remains strained. She still sees his actions as stupidity rather than vulnerability, and they speak only occasionally. But Ken has found purpose in the wreckage. He's become a respected voice in the expat community, warning newcomers about romance scams with the authority of someone who's lived through it. His blog has been viewed over 200,000 times. He's personally counseled dozens of men considering sending money to Thai girlfriends, and by his count, he's prevented at least 9 major scams totaling over $500,000. "I'll never get my money back," Ken wrote in a recent blog post, "and I'll never fully trust another romantic relationship. B destroyed that part of me. But if my loss prevents others from the same fate, if my story makes even one man pause before wiring money to a woman claiming her father needs surgery, then maybe there's meaning in what happened to me." 3 weeks ago, Ken received a message from a Thai woman claiming to be B's cousin, saying B wanted to apologize and return some money. Ken recognized it immediately as another scam, probably B herself, trying to extract more money through a reconciliation con. He blocked the number without responding. Ken still walks through the night markets of Chiang Mai, eats cheap meals at local restaurants, and occasionally feels the sharp sting of loneliness. He's learned to live with it rather than try to fill it, because filling loneliness with false connection is how he lost everything in the first place. "She didn't steal my money first," Ken tells men at his support group meetings. "She stole my trust, and once you give away your trust to the wrong person, taking everything else you have is easy." Kenneth Ward will spend his remaining years living modestly in Thailand, warning others, surviving on what little remains of his retirement dream. It's not the ending he imagined when he sold his business and flew to Southeast Asia seeking peace and companionship, but it's the ending he's living, and he's determined to make it mean something. If Ken's story impacted you, please subscribe and share this video immediately. Romance scams destroy thousands of lives every year, targeting kind, generous people who simply want love and connection. These predators are professionals who exploit loneliness with devastating efficiency and legal precision. By sharing stories like Ken's, we protect vulnerable people from financial and emotional devastation. Subscribe now, turn on notifications, and help us spread this critical message. Your share could save someone from losing their entire retirement. Thank you for watching, and remember, real love never requires you to continuously send money to someone's family. Verify everything, trust slowly, and never let loneliness override your judgment. Stay safe out there.